what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
This podcast is sponsored by the 2019 Footcandle Film Festival. This year's festival will be held September 27th through the 29th in Hickory, North Carolina. Learn more by visiting footcandlefilmfestival.com.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Footcandle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. I am co-director and co-founder of the Footcandle Film Society and the Footcandle Film Festival. Across from me is Chris Fry,
Hello.
Sharing the exact same titles.
Yes.
Co-producer, co-director of the festival and the Film Society. Chris, how you doing?
Doing good. Looking forward to hearing the thoughts on the movies that we're reviewing today. I know I kind of have a feeling of what you're thinking about them, but I'm interested to see if I'm right or wrong.
Okay, so there'll be a little predicting going on. Just as a little background, this is Footcandle Films. We talk about movies and do reviews of new films and hit movie news, and we also end up the show with a recommendation of a film that each of us like to propose that maybe you consider checking out or maybe haven't seen in a while and might be worth a revisit. But what Chris is kind of alluding to is something that I think it's important for people to understand is that, when you and I see films, we normally are not seeing them together.
Correct.
And we don't talk about the films that we're going to review until we sit down to review. So I have no idea what your perception is of the two films we'll be discussing today. You don't know mine. Now, we also work together.
True.
So
sometimes
we see each other, and sometimes it's hard to kind of repress every feeling or comment we have about a film we've seen. So we get little hints throughout the week leading up to the recording, but never a full stated opinion, which is what we're going to share with you today. So speaking of those fully formed opinions, we have two films that we will be discussing in the review section of our show. First off, we will be discussing Godzilla, King of the Monsters. This is the follow-up to Gareth Edwards' Godzilla from a few years back, but with a new director taking the reins and some new villains for Godzilla to battle. Then we'll move on to the musical biopic Rocketman about Sir Elton John, and starring what is his name? Taron Egerton. Gosh. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance. My hand is wrapped up in a sling. I am a little out of it from the medication they're having me take, and I can't write anything, and I'm very frustrated. So I'm winging a lot of the notes today because I cannot write anything, Chris, and I have no notes to go on. So I'm going to be relying on you to be a little bit of my fact checker on things as I'm just completely going off the top of my head on everything today.
Awesome.
All right. So with that, we will get started with Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
How many of these things are there?
17 and counting.
That's messed up.
Mothra, Rodan, Ghidorah.
Oh my. They're moving like a pack. They're hunting. They all respond directly to an alpha. We stop this Ghidorah. We stop them all.
Is there another creature that might stand a chance against him?
My God. Zilla.
Chris, anybody who's listened to any episode of our podcast has probably been able to figure out that I like big monster movies.
Correct.
I'm a big fan of even the original Godzilla films, big guys in rubber suits stomping around a model city, battling just otherworldly characters, and just that whole concept is fun for me. I enjoy it.
Right.
Partly it's because of the spectacle, and partly because it's just this idea of something that's very unnatural for us to think of. Some creatures and things so large and huge that can just wipe out a race or wipe out society in a pretty easy path.
Do you think some of it's nostalgia from your childhood watching some of these movies?
Absolutely. So do you remember the show Ultraman?
Yes.
Okay. I was a huge Ultraman fan. And this Ultraman is a giant guy, big, tall guy.
Sure.
That, has some cool powers. And, yeah, it's kind of done in that same Godzilla style of
like
filmmaking.
Our early version of the Power Rangers.
Very, very similar. Yes, exactly.
Except it was just him.
It's just the fact that he's huge. I mean, I think if he was normal size, I wouldn't really be that interested. But the fact that it's these towering giants are really, really exciting for me.
Sure.
I liked Gareth Edwards' previous version of this, whatever we're calling this, Godzilla verse or monster verse or something.
Okay.
And I liked it. I liked it for a couple of key reasons. One, I thought it gave some grounded bit of realism to this world around a Godzilla. I thought the CGI character of Godzilla was pretty well realized for, compared to what we've seen in other attempts. And overall, I thought the tone of the film worked for me. I liked that it didn't try to it wasn't too campy, but I think at the same time, by the end, it realized what it was, and it was just going to let you see a couple big monsters fight. So it was great. So here we have the follow-up Godzilla King of the Monsters. And Chris, my question to you to kind of kick off and find out where you are on this. My question is, can a movie exist and be successful and be well-regarded for spectacle alone? Or does a film, even like this, where you have these big spectacles that most people are going to go to buy the ticket to go see, does it have to have story and characters and development to go along with it? And it's a loaded question because I'll go ahead and say I thought this film was great on spectacle, but pretty horrible on everything else. So my question to you is, can it still exist as a good movie if it's just the spectacle that's really what people are there to see?
Well, I mean, I think where you can fall down on that is depends on your love of the subject matter. If you have a lot of history with Godzilla and you really love Godzilla and you've seen every single movie that's come out, which, I mean, I have no idea how many of them there actually are. Probably in the teens, maybe. But so I think if you are really into it and you're like a really Godzilla geek, then you may be disappointed because maybe you do want something more out of it than just creatures romping around on screen destroying stuff. But if you are going for the battle scenes and you could care less about people talking and plot, then yeah, I mean, it can exist. That's, I mean, Independence Day Resurgence, Pacific Rim Uprising. Those. Now, granted, Independence Day was more successful than the sequel. And same thing with Pacific Rim. So, I mean... But
if I remember correctly, you did not like Pacific Rim.
No, and I really hated
the sequel.
Yes, absolutely.
I can't imagine that you were a huge fan of Independence Day.
I was brainwashed because it was kind of... there was a lot of hype. It was
a big cultural touchstone at the time.
I thought at first it was good, and then when I saw it a second time, I realized how horrible it was.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's one of those where I was caught up in the moment, kind of opening weekend. I saw it in a big city when I was traveling there, and it was
sure.
Cool. I think I was actually in a city that was destroyed in the movie, which was
awesome.
Cool.
So, even better.
Yeah.
So Godzilla King of the Monsters, I am fortunate in that I come to this franchise series. Yes, we did review Godzilla 2014. And I liked it. I think I may have maybe liked it a little more than you. Because I think your expectation, because you like the movie.
Yeah, I probably went in with a little higher expectation.
I was kind of like, I have no expectations. Like, well, it's okay. So with this film, I went in with low expectations. I knew you were really excited about seeing it. And, I mean, are there plot holes all over the place? Yes, but I kind of expect it. I don't expect these things to be well plotted out, for their stories to make sense, because the overall idea of the movies don't make sense. It's just big things up running around. It's like the more they try to make it have an actual plot or make a statement, it just seems to kind of fall apart to me.
Yeah.
So, for example, in this movie, the fact that they had more than one bad guy was actually, or bad guy monster, I should say, was actually a positive. Because for me, in the last movie, and I understand it's like the thing is, how long do you hide Godzilla and before you finally give a reveal? And a lot of people complained about 2014 Godzilla in that they felt like they waited too long to reveal, which, I can't remember. Our intern would have to go back and see how I felt about it. But that was something that was, to me, I guess you could say maybe daring, in that in this film, you see the monsters right away. I mean, you see Godzilla and then you start seeing monsters. But the benefit of they kind of came and went. They would go into hiding or come back, and they served different purposes in the plot. But I thought that was actually kind of a unique thing. And actually, for a big budget blockbuster that has more than one bad guy, I'm not sure I know of another example, which we've hammered at home several times on this podcast. For example, the Spider-Man movie that had Electro with Jamie Foxx and all that. It was like they threw 50 million bad guys and you can't keep them straight and none of them are really tied up. I actually felt this film did a decent job of kind of telling you what the monster was, what it was doing, and having it come and go. It actually kind of made sense. Now, I will say, of course, where it falls apart is the human stuff.
Yeah.
But for me, I know, or I expect going in, that that's just window dressing.
Yeah.
So,
but I think we can do better, filmmakers. I think, it's possible to have the same level of monster spectacle that we had with this film, because I agree. All the scenes of the monsters and the fighting and the introduction of all the different creatures and the personality they all seem to have. And it was cool. I really liked I was happy every time a monster was on screen. Okay. And I thought visually it was gorgeous. I don't
remember the cinematography. Well, there was in the 2014, there was like they had
the Halo jump.
You saw the red stuff coming really out of it. So some of that, but there was like one or two instances where in this film, the cinematography, or I guess you could call it that because it was pretty much all CGI because monsters don't exist. But
right,
the way the frames looked, a lot of it looked like we've often talked about. You could take a scene and hang it up on your wall, and it would be like a painting. You would really appreciate what you're seeing on screen. There were several of these moments.
It was gorgeous, like absolutely gorgeous. So. I do believe we can do better with the humans though, because I actually thought the 2014 Godzilla, the human stories were weak, but they didn't detract from my enjoyment of the film. It was almost like, I don't really remember any of the characters from the film. I don't remember any of the plot from the film, but it was okay because I still enjoyed the film as a whole.
I didn't know these people, speaking of Vera Farmiga and the guy from Friday Night Lights, whatever his name is.
Kyle Chandler.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Playing Mark Russell.
I didn't remember they weren't in the first movie.
They're not in the first movie.
And I didn't remember that. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I did have to kind of do a little bit of a mental check. It's like, were they in the first movie? I don't remember. The problem for me with this film, and again, I'm happy with the visual elements of the film, and I liked everything about the creatures. It was the human story I thought was probably one of the worst I've seen in a big budget movie like this. It's gotten worse since the 2014 Godzilla.
The human story... It has gotten worse.
2014 didn't offend me. It just, I didn't really think much about it afterwards. This one, it was actually kind of physically distracting for me how bad the storyline was going on outside of the monsters. And it starts early on. You've got a mustache twirling bad guy played by Charles Dance who just waltzes in with a paramilitary group at the right time. Did he not make
enough from Game of Thrones?
I don't know, but it's just, it was so theatrical coming in as the big villain.
It was terrible.
You've got some double crossing or some, people with changed alliances that really doesn't make any sense.
No. They don't.
There's some moments. I got to call it just a couple minutes, and then I'll go over to the positives. I'm doing this in reverse. I'm going to get my negatives out of the way.
Fair enough. Get it off your chest.
Yeah. So Kyle Chandler plays Mark Russell, who is, I don't know. What is he? He's a animal person?
He is not a monarch scientist.
No, Monarch is the organization, this cryptozoological agency that is facing off against these god-sized monsters.
Which
he's
his
not
wife
with them.
is a part of that.
His wife is a part of it. Vera Farmiga, Dr. Emma Russell, and they have a daughter, Madison Russell, played by Millie Bobby Brown. And there's the mother father are separated at the time. What we find out is that they are kind of victims of some of tragedy that befall because of the 2014 Godzilla movie, which I thought was cool. I'm like, oh yes, make it to where we're seeing some of the repercussions.
They lost their son.
They lost their son because buildings were falling and there's all this stuff going on. I'm like, yes, that's actually kind of cool. Show us the impact it has on the family. But then their actions just made no sense throughout the film, and they're estranged for a while because Vera Farmiga's character is kind of siding with the bad guys.
Her character arc is a mess.
Well, and then it changes, and nobody seems to care that she's changed alliances, and everybody just seems to be okay with everything. And even though she was about ready to plot the destruction of half of humankind, and then there's just like, oh well, she snapped out of it, and we're all cool now. Everybody's fine.
Yeah.
Well, probably it got to the point of the film groaning for me where, their daughter, Madison, seems to be a pretty smart kid and pretty adventurous kid and goes out and tries to do some things. I'm not even sure what she was doing with some sort of box to try to control one of the monsters or something, or attract one of the monsters. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But she goes missing, and we have a scene with the two parents where they're talking with Bradley Whitford, who plays Dr. Rich Stanton, who is just there to make jokes. That's basically his deal. They're talking with him, and they're saying about trying to figure out how, and they start fighting with each other because they're trying to figure out how they're going to find their daughter. And he's like, boy, I sure would have hated to be in the house with you guys. And then they look at each other, the mother and father, and say, house. She went home. That's where she is. And it's like this big light bulb went off in their head, and they're like, oh, she must be at our house. Their house is in the middle of this freaking battlefield being exploded and destroyed, but yet they think their daughter's gone there. And lo and behold, their daughter had gone there, which made no sense. It's just those kind of things. It's contrivances. It's trying to just make the humans be in the right place around the monsters for them to be in danger or peril from the monsters. And I felt like this movie tried actually too hard to put way too many human characters in the place when we don't want that. None of the audience wants that. Right. There's no point in doing that.
Everybody just wants the monsters.
Nobody's clamored to go to a Godzilla movie because we want to see what kind of character development we get with the human beings around him.
Right.
Okay? I would have been perfectly fine if the whole movie was all the monsters fighting and you've got a broadcaster who's watching the whole thing, kind of narrating it. Okay, so now it looks like Godzilla is about to do this. And I'd be totally fine with that. I don't need any character development. I do need maybe somebody to give me a little background on who the creatures are and where they came from and what their powers are. But beyond that, just let them go. We do not need all of this. So it was more frustrating that they decided to actually amp up the human story when that was the part of these movies that never really works very well. And it was just so much more amplified here to the point where it was very distracting. Did you know, Chris, that there's an actress in this film, Zhang, playing two different people?
No.
She played twins of the same doctor in two different locations.
Okay.
There you go. That's enough to tell you that they arbitrarily are adding characters to this plot that nobody even knows are additional characters. She played two people that were twins of each other, two different scientists, because if you really pay attention to the plot, they're in two completely different parts of the world. And we cut from one scene to another, and there she is again. And nobody's questioning from an audience, why are we seeing the same person? Because we're not following the plot because it's way too overwrought. That to me is a sign of like there's a real issue with the film when that's going on.
Well, see, and I mean, the character, I will say, the only thing that bothered me with any of the humans, because I expect it to be garbage. I agree, they could do better, but history has taught me that they're probably not going to, because I don't like the Pacific Rim stuff. I don't, it's just, I don't like that stuff. So I don't expect it, but Vera Farmiga's character arc was annoying.
Oh, it was just, and it made no sense.
And I thought, Charles Dance's thing as the bad guy, that was annoying, but I kind of expected him. But him in combination with her was terrible. I will say, I was surprised, and it did kind of annoy me. I remember in the first movie, Bryan Cranston in 2014, he comes and goes pretty quickly, and everybody was really surprised about that because you thought he was going to be more involved in the movie.
Yeah.
In this film, they teased Millie Bobby Brown as Madison Russell a lot. And I was like, I like her in Stranger Things. Okay, let's see what she does when she has more to do other than just walk around with a bald head. And it was really, I thought, nothing but a shameless way to get younger kids interested in Godzilla. It was just a Stranger Things coattails ride. So that was really, that was disappointing. That did.
She really only had one scene. I'm thinking going out to the ball field with that box. That was kind of her doing something of any importance whatsoever. You're right. Sally Hawkins, she's a good actress.
She is.
I like the work she's in. She had a very small role in the previous Godzilla film. I did not realize she was going to be in this film too. And here she shows up, and she's in the first half. And spoiler alert, although I really don't think I'm ruining anything for anybody, she dies. And it's but it's not anything ceremonial.
See,
and actually, it's
that
almost,
just shows you how bad it is.
You didn't realize she died, did she?
I'd forgotten because I thought I was going to give as a positive, just like in the first one. It was kind of surprising to me that Bryan Cranston died. I was like, oh, it was kind of like a wake up call. In this film, there are 2 more people that I do remember who died.
I'm not going to spoil those.
And I was actually kind of like, oh, interesting.
But Sally Hawkins,
that's funny.
I guarantee you, my bet is that Sally Hawkins, they didn't film a death scene for her. They just said, you know what? We can't get her back on set or else she's not interested in doing any more of the movie. So we're just going to do something with a giant creature's foot and boom, she's gone. And
so
that's basically what they did.
Took place off screen or no?
No, it was, they were running up in the Arctic base. They were running outside, like out in the snow and ice. And the creatures are all around him, and all of a sudden you see just a big foot come down, and there's a rumble. And then a little bit later on, they're all looking at a picture of her on the screen, kind of like sad for a couple seconds, you know. Yeah. I'm like, all right. So you got that. So anyway, I think as everybody can probably tell, we're not big on the human stories that are going on in this film at all. And I will say it got to the point to me where it actually made my enjoyment of the film lesser because of it, because there's just too much badness.
Sure.
One more bad thing I'll throw out.
Okay.
And this is an issue I always have in films. And unfortunately, it even happens like in a really good action franchise like Mission Impossible series. But when Vera Farmiga's character early in the film places a video call to the hero team, I guess, at their base. So all of a sudden she pops up on the big video screen and she's there to communicate with them through FaceTime or video chat or whatever it is. And as she's talking, there is video footage that then shows up in her feed, almost like an edited montage to accompany her talk. And it's just, all I could think of right then is, all right, did she edit a video to play while she's talking to her family to explain what she's doing? And how much work did she put into that? And how did she even coordinate it with her technology to show this video like at right times when she's mentioning? Well, she didn't, obviously. It's just something the filmmakers use to give us more information that's very artificial.
Sure.
You know, it's almost like with the Mission Impossible movies when Tom Cruise gets his mission and he opens up a suitcase and it's this huge, like, animated 3D sequence showing him all the things he has to do.
Sure.
And it's basically like there's a whole marketing team that back at the MI group that put this together spent weeks doing this whole thing, and then he watches it one time and it blows up and they're done. So, anyway, that stuff bugs me. It's like it's just frustrating. If that was all it was in this film, I kind of chuckle that off. But I think it just keeps tying into this fact that they just didn't know what to do with the human stories. And they were just grasping at straws, I felt like. And it just made it tough. Okay, I feel like I've railed on that side of the film enough. I will say some things I thought were positive. I'd like to hear any other thoughts you've got as well. Again, the visual imagery I thought was absolutely gorgeous. I thought the monster designs were really good. You would have had to tell me a while back that a giant 3-headed Hydra type creature would have shown well on screen in a 3D version. And it worked. I mean, it was actually really pretty good and was a great character design and was scary, and it worked. And there was even they had some great far off shots of the creatures, like either on a mountaintop or a volcano. And like you said, it was almost like paintings, like beautiful artwork. So all of that. All the visual design crew team was great. Everything about that. So I will say that I thought Godzilla looked good. I mean, he was well formed as well. I thought the action with the creatures was good and kind of well choreographed. You kind of knew what was going on most of the time. There are a couple really great, almost like a classic 1950s Godzilla style shots where far wide shot that shows the two creatures like looking at each other. And before they come in, like ram up against each other. That was great. And I think definitely more of an homage to the older films, that framing with those shots. So, yeah, I mean, I'm a very split on this film because, if you go for the spectacle, I think it's worth going to the spectacle. If you go because you want to see a story and a plot, and it's horrible. So, anyway, that's where I am. What other thoughts did you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically on the same page. I think, overall, I guess, we talked before, if my expectations were so low, then it definitely met them and maybe exceeded them a little bit because the cinematography or the visuals were so well done and the sound design was really cool. And I had a good experience watching a blockbuster giant monster movie.
Well, I'm surprised. I am surprised. I thought you were going to hate this film, but
no. And I think had the human element been there, then it probably I would have been like surprised that I liked it even more. But I just wasn't expecting it. I thought something you talked about how they did kind of reference the 2014 film, and they also. And I liked that. I didn't really realize for a little bit that these weren't the same people in the first movie because of how they were kind of tying everything together. A creature that was other than Godzilla, the creature that was in the 2014 movie,
the Muto,
kind of makes another appearance in this movie, and I thought that was cool. At first, I thought it was cool how they were also referencing Skull Island. They maybe did a little bit too much.
Well,
but I understand because if this thing makes enough money, which it has been a disappointment box office wise, the next movie was supposed to be King Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus King Kong, and so I understand why they're it's franchise care is what they were doing, but they maybe overdid it just a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely dropped in a lot of references to Skull Island and showed a couple really quick flashing shots of Kong in the jungle. So definitely they're trying to build this another shared universe, because everybody sees the model that others have followed and seem to be doing pretty well with.
Sure.
Yeah, but this movie has not fared well box office wise or critics wise, so it's going to be a tough road to get more movies out of this. We'll see how it goes. Michael Dougherty was the director of the film. Also did the screenplay for it too, which may be part of the problem. I like some of the stuff I've seen him do. I've mentioned Krampus as a recommendation.
Yes.
He directed and wrote Krampus, which I like Krampus. I think Krampus is a great fun
hearing
movie.
You say the word
Krampus. And then he did Trick or Treat, which I did not see, but I've heard actually people say is a pretty good horror Halloween anthology little mixture of short films. But he was also the writer of Superman Returns, which was the Bryan Singer Superman, which didn't really work very well. Not a great movie. So it's kind of a mixed bag with Michael Dougherty. This film, unfortunately, if I'm trusting somebody with the visual style of a film, I think he's got it down pat. But maybe he doesn't need to be writing the film. Maybe there could be screenplay by some others. I'm not sure. That is Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Overall, it sounds like we're of the same mindset. I just might be a little bit more passionate in both directions than you are, but that's probably because I love these kind of movies in general and hope for the best for them. And this one was a disappointment on half of the scale of the film.
I guess I wonder too, maybe some of the human stuff could have been better if Gareth Edwards, the director from the first one, had returned for this. But,
well, again, I think the human stuff in the first one was good. I mean, it wasn't great, and I still couldn't tell you what the plot was of those characters, but I remember at the time it didn't bother me.
Sure.
I was okay going along with the human plot for the hour and a half it took to lead up to see Godzilla fight. It didn't bother me in that film. Here, every time there was a human on screen, they're talking and giving so much exposition and explaining everything. I just said, I just want to get back to the monsters. Just please leave and go show me the monsters again. So
show me the monsters.
Show me the monsters. All right, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, out now for a little while. So if you are a big fan of the spectacle and the genre, it's worth a watch. But don't go in expecting anything beyond great monster visuals and fighting. So, all right, Chris, let's move into our second review, which is the film about Sir Elton John, the musical fantasy Rocketman.
What did you say your name was again?
My name is...
Reggie!
Reginald Dwight.
Reginald? That's my granddad's name.
So how does a fat boy from nowhere get to be a soul man?
You gotta kill the person you were born to be in order to become the person you want to be.
I'm thinking of changing my name to Elton.
You could be the best-selling artist in America if you desire.
I was trying to do something bold. Why are you still something flashy?
Director Dexter Fletcher's Rocketman is a musical fantasy about Elton John's breakthrough years. IMDb lists it as his fourth film, with the others being Eddie the Eagle, Sunshine on Leith, and Wild Bill. One film is noticeably absent from that list, Alan, how about we challenge ourselves to discuss Fletcher's latest without reflecting on or comparing it to the Voldemort-esque film, which is curiously absent from that list? Or do we dare mention that film that must not be named because it can't be avoided?
That's a good point. So you're talking about Walk the Line, right?
He didn't direct that, did he?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. I just want to throw you for
wait
that.
Wait a second. So. Maybe he wrote it, but I don't think he did.
No. So, of course, for those maybe not in the loop, he did, quote, co-direct, unquote, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
You want me to talk through a review of Rocketman without comparing it to Bohemian Rhapsody?
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess I can do that.
Whether you like it or hate it, I want you to do so without comparing it to another film on its own merits. Yep. It's going to be tough.
Man.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. You threw down the gauntlet right now. So.
I did.
All right. I will say this. Rocketman, I really, really dug.
Okay.
I thought it was great.
Okay.
I did go see it twice, and it was by my choice to go see it a second time.
Full disclosure, I had found out that you'd seen it twice, which led me to believe I thought I knew your opinion of the film.
Well, I tried to play it off like my wife and kid wanted to go see it. Maybe they took me kicking and screaming. But
sure.
No, it was my birthday wish. It was my birthday week, and I'm like, yes, I want to go see this again.
Fair enough.
I loved it. I thought it was great, and I'll tell you the reasons I thought it was great.
Sure.
I love music biographies, but I have been very, very loath to like biopics as of late. Not referencing any film in particular.
Because that's you're going to get an electric shock.
You have thrown down the rule.
Sure.
This film takes an interesting concept of the biopic and says, you know what, let's make this a recollection. So the whole film is staged with Elton John being in a certain place and thinking back to events of his life.
So a giant flashback like in Walk Hard.
A little bit.
Before I go on stage, I need to think about my life.
That's true. A little bit of that.
Aspect of my life.
The difference here, though, is that the minute they set up that conceit and say, okay, and I guess I can say, it's the first scene of the film.
Sure.
He's in a drug rehab center. The minute you know he's in a drug rehab center and he's talking with others and people are asking him about his life and all, and he's recalling things, that moment right away, I feel like you're given carte blanche to say, you know what, the music doesn't have to be in the order it was released. We don't have to get every little detail right about being historically accurate on everything. We're more conveying emotion and what he's feeling, not as much exactly things happen in the sequence they happen. Where other biopics spend so much time trying to show how a certain song title came to be because they heard somebody say something and they said, oh, that sounds like a great song title. And then you come to find out it becomes a song later on. So many of these biopics spend time talking about how they made their music certain ways and not as much about what the artist themselves was really feeling or going through during the process. And I felt like this one did a great job balancing that, where we still got some of the typical musical biopics. There are some things I have hangups with it, and I'll mention that in a little bit. There are some times it does fall into the cliche musical biopic more than I would like for it to have. But I think it did a great job of trying to push the format a little more in a different direction with some more fantasy sequences, some more dreamlike sequences, some more, I don't know, just I dug it. I think Taron Egerton is really, really good. He's not an actor I've really thought much anything about, but I thought he nailed it. I thought he was really good. And actually, I will also say
Jamie Bell.
Yes, Jamie Bell as Bernie Taupin. To me, their friendship personified in this film was one of the better platonic male friendships I've seen in film. And I believed it. That's the thing. After several scenes of them together, I believed that how close they were and how much they cared for each other and how they were a good team. So I've got a lot more to say, but I want to hear your thoughts for a little bit. What do you think? Because you are not as big a fan of the format as I am. Although you have liked recent musical biopics.
That shouldn't be named.
Yeah, that shouldn't be named.
Yeah, I think overall I am not as harsh on musical biopics or biopics in general, because I think, the thing is they're telling you somebody's life story and, you say, oh, they're stereotypical. Well, yet they're making movies about them because they are famous and because they did have ups and downs. You know, there hasn't been a biopic on They Might Be Giants. You know why? They've been around forever, but they don't do drugs. They don't get ridiculously popular.
There's nothing really
there's a
sexy
reason
about them. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, they make good music and I love them, but they also don't have a biopic because there's no point. So yeah, you're going to have the roller coaster ride of fame, drugs, and, you know, all this problems and up and down, problems with family, like you've had with Walk the Line. That was one you threw out. So I kind of get that, but I guess if there's something about the film, whether it's performances or something else that kind of makes you forget that, it is kind of painting by the numbers. I feel like in a way, I mean, everybody's life progresses that way. You get older, you do paint by the numbers, you do have certain things. And, you know, I feel like it's kind of unavoidable, but I will give this film credit. Like you said, the same things. Actually, it was like you were reading my notes, although you weren't, because you couldn't type them because of your broken hand.
No, I can't type them. They're all in my head right now.
But the thing that made it different, and I know Elton John's music, but I'm not really aware of the chronology. And I found out after the fact, they kind of put songs where they worked with the narrative, kind of like you would for a Broadway musical, which I feel like eventually this is probably going to be turned into. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't that to start off with, and then they made the movie afterwards, because that's kind of what it feels like. Was this an established musical, and then they turned into a film? But it didn't bother me that they played fast and loose with some of the time periods and stuff. It didn't bother me. I thought it worked. And what made it different for me was, instead of relying on concert scenes, which there were concert scenes, but instead of relying solely on concert scenes or times in a studio, they were able to literally break into song like a normal musical would. And that was enough of a different take to make it fresh for me. So that's something that I immediately appreciated. And, you know, you've mentioned Taron Egerton's performance as well as Jamie Bell. Yeah. Both those guys were great, but the other, and I think it probably will be recognized come Oscar time. So I shouldn't say unsung hero, because who knows if it'll be recognized, but I feel like it will be. The costumes of this thing, because, you know, Elton John, even if you know very little about him, you know that he dresses crazy and wore all these crazy outfits. And they do, you know, I think a pretty good, accurate job of recreating all these different looks that he had. The cinematography, the way they shot a bunch of stuff was really cool. So it was different enough for me that I feel like it is trying to do something different. So I was able to appreciate it. So now,
my misgiving is kind of a backhanded.
I have a real misgiving.
I've got a couple of them, and one misgiving I'll give is it's a little bit of a backhanded compliment, is that as much as I loved all of the fantastical sequences. I like the breaking into song. Yes. And there's moments where you almost feel like they're on a stage performing and the sets are moving around them. It's a very theatrical feel, and it was awesome. It was great. But yet they still relied on some tropes of the musical biopic when they didn't need to anymore. For example, there is a montage in the middle of the film when Elton John is becoming very famous.
Is it the Honky Cat or whatever?
No, it's before the Honky Cat.
Oh, I know. Okay, I had heard that song, but I was never aware, because I guess I was too young. I was never aware that was an actual song.
Oh, yes.
So it starts off, and
it's a great song.
Wait, they're saying Honky Cat.
Yeah,
it kind of took me a minute to kind of appreciate
that. Right before the Honky Cat. I'm going to lead into that. Okay. So right before the Honky Cat sequence.
That's such a funny thing
to
say.
I'm going to keep saying it. There's one of the things I hate more than anything, the montage of somebody becoming popular. And it's just newspaper clippings flashing up on the screen.
Okay.
And you're like, it's short. It's nowhere as egregious as...
So there's not a song being sung. You just see this happening.
No, there's a piece of music playing in the background, but it's just visual montage of Elton John captivates audience at this performance.
And it showed how much money he was making and how he was worth a lot of money.
Okay, and the reason that doesn't work, and the reason they don't need to do that anymore, is the very next scene was the Honky Cat sequence.
Which is like a giant shopping spree.
Exactly.
Right.
And right away, that scene alone showed you how popular and successful Elton John was becoming, because he's walking through stores in this musical sequence, and there's people catering to him, and there's crowds of people following him, and he's got more money. I'm like, why didn't you just show us that? You don't need to do the little cliche montage anymore of saying, oh, look, here's all the newspaper clippings reminding you that he's now becoming really famous and successful and popular. Every musical biopic does it. And I think it's annoying as all get out.
I can see that.
When this movie was doing so good at every other way of conveying the story without going into cliche territory. So that's the thing is like, if you're going to go to this fantasy, more theatrical feel, this break into a musical thing, go all the way. Like, you're doing fine. Like, every scene you've thrown at me so far that breaks the mold has been great. So why are you stopping to go back to the tried and true formula for a few scenes? It just didn't make any sense. But that was just a gripe because I was digging the movie so much. And then when that scene happened, it's like, ugh. Just same old thing. And then they come back with the honky cat sequence. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. No, they remembered that this is fun. This is a lot better than what they just did. So we're good. So that was, it's a little bit of a misgiving, and that I loved what they were doing so much. I wanted them to keep that same style as much as possible through the whole film and keep it going. Richard Madden is John Reed. It's another little bit of a cliche where I felt like it's a little cartoonish. It was he walks into the screen. He plays someone who becomes a lover of John with Elton John for a while. They have a relationship. He also becomes his manager after a while.
Right.
He is follow the way it's portrayed. He falls a little bit into that. Oh yes, of course he's going to be the bad guy. It's pretty clearly
too much of a
he's going to be bad
villain.
for Elton John, and Elton shouldn't really be with him. It was a little stereotypical the way he was introduced and the way he was presented on the screen. You kept waiting for that to drop where you knew he was going to be bad.
Right.
And I wish it wasn't so obvious. It took a little bit out of the film there. But again, the way I kind of make amends with it in my head is that this is Elton John recalling his life. So maybe that's in his recollection. That's how he sees the guy. He saw him as all dashing and debonair, but then also bad from
because it's
day
using
one.
The framework of him relaying all this stuff in rehab.
So again, it makes it work okay. That's really my only real misgivings. So what have you got?
Oh, man.
Is it Bryce Dallas Howard?
No,
you liked her?
No, I actually thought, so she
plays Elton's mom,
one of his parents, and
all right, well,
Stephen McIntosh, who played one of Elton's parents, the father, dad,
Stanley,
the kind of absent dad. I thought all that was great.
Okay, good.
Actually, the one thing that was maybe a little distracting for me about Bryce Dallas Howard was not her performance, but it was the fact that I knew who she was, but I couldn't figure out who she was.
Right,
so it was kind of irritating me. But then I was like, oh, no, now I know who you are. So, no, outside of that, no.
Okay, well, what's your misgiving?
Well,
is it the kid?
No.
Oh, man. Okay, well, I'm just stop guessing. You tell me what your misgiving is.
Because I think maybe it was my wife who was with me, thought the little kid was a little rough. But I was like,
yeah, my boys thought the kid was a little rough. I'm like, I thought he was okay.
I like the kid.
It's all right.
No, let me build up to it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so we've mentioned that the progression of the movie happens with songs, and they may not be in the right order, but didn't matter to me. I will say, Bitches Back at First, I don't know that song really well. I have heard of it, and I know that that's a refrain in it, but I didn't. So having that be kind of the first song that they launch into was a little distracting for me because, it's like, well, the lyrics are supposed to be telling me something, and I don't know what they're telling because I'm not familiar with the song. But that was okay because then you kind of figured it out. But I liked that. I liked how they did that, and like he's in a devil costume. And I liked how that was staged.
That was a really.
And it was jarring for me, and it was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I felt like it was because I didn't know the song, but it worked.
But I think also that was the scene where early in the film where people I could tell in the theater were just like, what's going on? This is not going to be a traditional music
my wife was kind of
like,
what's happening? Yeah. Whereas I knew it was going to be a musical and they were going to sing.
And I thought it was awesome. So,
it was good. So I like that. Crocodile Rock, which they kind of ruin in the trailer in a way, but still really good.
Yeah.
And my favorite, my absolute favorite, your song was good too. I actually didn't have that in my notes.
Yeah, that was a good moment.
But I think that was a little, and that's also kind of ruined the trailer. And that was it wasn't milked, but it very easily could have been milked for too much sentimentality. But it was good. No, my absolute favorite was Rocketman.
Yeah.
And because of where that starts and then where the song ends, and there's a moment which they do show in the trailer, which it's kind of out of context, but you just see him coming towards the stage and he's like being prepared. And if you knew what came before that in the movie, it's really awesome. And then he grabs the bat, and as soon as he gets out on stage, you can see it's like almost like a psychotic shift where he gets really happy and he puts on the fake smile. that was amazing. And just seeing Egerton do that, and you're like, because you saw what came before, and you're like, yeah, that's a famous person having to just put on a...
Well, keeping in mind, the shot right before it even, too. We know what... I mean, you and I know what led into that scene. We won't go into all the details of it, but as he's being kind of wheeled on... a stretcher, and it's a silhouetted shot, and then all of a sudden he's lifted back up and put back into place, and then costumes put back on him, and then that leads to him. That was a brilliant sequence.
It was an assembly line sequence, essentially.
And it was like they're just getting him going again. They just got to keep him on the treadmill, and even if he's killing himself, it doesn't matter. We need to get him up on stage, and it was a beautiful sequence.
Yes, so well done, and that's what makes me just surprised, because that seems like that's something that would be constructed on a Broadway stage, kind of like, as he's going across.
Oh, like very theatrical,
Yeah, and it's just, man, it was so well done. So I really like that.
All right, break it to me. What do you not like?
Unfortunately, it came at the end of the film.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I liked the inclusion of the song, I'm Still Standing.
Uh-huh.
And it made sense. And I like how he was like coming back into his own. But what I really couldn't stand, and I'm not sure why they did it, was how they then basically did a lot of green screen with Taron Egerton.
You're breaking my heart, Chris.
Instead of just okay, if this is a low budget film, I get it. You want to put him in the video that God and everyone has seen. I get it. If you and I made this film, we'd probably have to do a green screen if we could get it. So sorry, Taron. I know we've spent, but we don't have the budget. We're just going to green screen.
Okay, so you didn't like the technical way they did it.
Absolutely hated it. It was like fingernails on a chalkboard. And at first I thought, wait, I was like, oh, there's going to be a reason. It's going to be like, we're going to see him come off the set and then he's going to address the camera. Like, I thought there was going to be something to it. But no, they just wanted to put him in it and just green screened him in it. But it just, to me, it was bad green screen. And it was like, it wasn't like Forrest Gump where you dropped him in talking to presidents or something like that. It just was terrible. And I'm like, you had the money to totally recreate this video. I know you did. So you could have gotten people painted up just like they were in the video. It was really distracting. So then that kind of confused me. And then...
Oh, the title cards.
The title cards.
I know. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Terrible. Unfortunately, I happen to know because I'd heard people kind of griping about it. And I didn't know why, because the whole rest of the movie, I was like, yeah, so what? Elton John's a executive producer on this movie. Big deal. He's still alive. They wanted to make a movie. Yeah. Big deal. However, the title cards at the end
they were bad.
Were just a little, and it'd be different if unfortunately we had already lost Elton John. He'd passed away and somebody was choosing to put this in there. But the fact that he's an executive producer and it was just kind of like, and some of this stuff didn't even make sense. It was like, why are you telling us this?
Well, I agree with you on the title cards.
The ending was terrible.
Okay, the green screen didn't bother me.
Oh man,
I loved the recreation of the video, or not recreating, but I loved the showing of the video. I know, I loved the inclusion of the video. Okay. I thought it worked for me. It was great. But I'm with you on the title cards. I was actually going to say that's my other big gripe. The other music biopic cliche they fell into, and I'll tell you why. Because I already figured out how they could have nailed the end of this film so much better than the title cards. Do the "I'm Still Standing" sequence. That's fine. Let's shoot the video over again and do it for real. But what you do is before the song ends, get him walking off the set. Okay? Like basically you're pulling away and you realize he was on a video shoot. Walking away. No, here we go. Walking away. And as he's walking off the set, he goes up and embraces his husband. So right away you realize he's married. Then their kids run up. Oh, he's got kids now. Cool. And it's like, because we're already in a fantasy film, you can play this up and show us everything at the end without the cards.
Let me blow your mind.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Verging off that idea and would have made me okay with the green screen.
Okay.
Taron Egerton as Elton John, still singing a song, and he walks. Oh yeah, you know where
there you go.
He walks off. Elton John, his husband, and his two kids are standing there.
Okay, that would work too.
And they embrace him. They're like, "Oh, good job!" And then you see them there.
That would work.
And then it breaks the fourth wall.
That would have
been so
because right away you don't need a title card saying Elton John married this guy and they have two kids. It's like you just see them.
You know what? Yeah. You know what? Okay, Elton John embraces him, and then he can be like, Taron, great job. I want you to meet my husband.
And my kids.
And then you say, my husband, David, and these are kids. And they don't have to say the kids' names if he doesn't want to because you don't want to ruin anonymity. Perfect.
No, you're right. That actually would have worked.
Man, would have been amazing.
I was going to say, either way, either that or whatever. I was all for, I think our ideas are basically the same.
Yeah,
they could have expressed the same information as the title cards a different, more creative way, just like they have the rest of the film.
Because I do understand how Elton John finding love and acceptance, that was a big thing in the movie. And so finding love, yes, he has a husband and he's, able to be openly gay, and that's important. And so I understand he's able to have kids and able to have a family that he can be happy with. Like, I get it.
Yeah, me too.
Just
I
handle it in a different
No, you're right. My big misgivings of the film were the two places where I felt like it became the stereotypical biopic, and that was the musical montage of being successful and it's the title cards at the very end. I agree. Those were my two things. I'm like, if they could have found a more creative way to do those two things that tied in with the rest of the film, it almost would have been a perfect music biopic for me. Like, it really would have.
Sure. And I think it would have been up there for me as well. Like maybe one of my favorites if it hadn't have been for that last part. And it was a 1-2 punch for me.
Yeah. I can see if you felt that way about both parts of it. That was tough.
The thing is, I'm going to beat the dead horse here just for a second. It was the building up. I heard the song, heard him kind of coming up with it. And he was coming out of rehab. And then he's in the halls of the rehab and he has on the I'm Still Standing get up. And I'm like, awesome. Yeah. He's actually going to, they're actually going to recreate the video. And then, nope, it's just a bunch of cheesy green screen. I was like, no.
See, well, I guess I just wasn't.
The anticipation was they were going to do it and then they didn't.
I was wrapped up in the moment so much, I didn't really pay attention to the green screen. Gotcha. The second time I watched it, I started to realize, this is exactly the shots from the video. And he's just kind of on top of where Elton was on before. Yeah, that's fine. But I think it's interesting that you and I kind of picked out that same thing with the title cards at the end because it was bad. I mean, it was like you had just watched a TV movie documentary about him and you're seeing the final title cards. It just didn't match the tone of the film at all.
They're so close to the finish line of being completely original and they just
couldn't quite cross the line there. So a couple of quick things I'll mention, just some really call out moments for me. There's a sequence. I'll admit the beginning 20, 30 minutes, I love the beginning, the bitches back sequence. I thought that was great. Started kind of wondering how the film was really going to go for a while because the whole childhood stuff was a little hit or miss. I love the stuff with the parents. They were good. I don't know if it was just the child actor there. I was just waiting for it to really grab me. The moment this film grabbed me, and I realized I'm digging it completely.
It was when Taron Egerton came on the screen?
It was the whole sequence of the Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, which goes from him being a teenager playing in a bar. And they do this great sequence where it's like he runs out of the bar down the street and he goes in. And when he emerges at this big carnival, he's now an adult Elton John, played by Taron Egerton. That whole dance sequence and the energy Taron Egerton's putting into it and just the choreography of everything was glorious. And I just said, all right, I'm totally hooked on this film now if they keep up this energy. And luckily they did. The film never really sagged. It never really, had some moments that I thought were groaners or just lasted way too long. It kept a good pace, but it went the range of emotions I think they were trying to hit. And again, I feel like this is a film that I really felt like I got a sense of how Elton John felt. I didn't just need somebody to pretend they were Elton John and act like him and look like him. I actually kind of got a sense of I feel like I felt like he did. I understood how he felt during these times, which was really what made it a little more special for me. And closing moment I'll mention, I think my favorite quick little moment of the whole film. It was unfortunately spoiled in the trailer too, but I still love it in the film. Even though one of the title cards at the end of the film says that Elton John and Bernie Taupin never had an argument, we saw two of them in the film. So it does kind of throw a little argument against that. Right. But there's one moment where they're backstage and Bernie Taupin's confronting Elton and they have a big little Elton shouting at him and just very upset and very overwhelmed by everything. And he starts to walk on stage and you think, okay, he's just going to leave and then they'll make up sometime later. But no, Elton stops and kind of walks back over to Bernie and just kind of reaches out and grabs his hand and says, I'm sorry. And Bernie says, yeah, I know. And it's like, and goes out there and performs. I'm like, that's a friendship. That's how you personify, show us a friendship on screen. So just a quick little moment, but everybody in the audience around me is like, oh yeah, that was nice. So, anyway, I love the film. I wish those 2 or 3 elements of it were done better to make this a more perfect film, but I loved it. Had a great time with it. It helps that I'm a huge fan of 70s Elton John music.
Sure.
Not as much after the 70s. I don't like any of his I'm not a big fan of any of his more recent stuff, but 1970s Elton John is classic stuff and really good.
What you and I both appreciated about it as well. I'm not a huge, I like him okay, but I'm not really aware of time period stuff. But unlike a lot of other biopics too, they didn't try to do, and this is not just musical biopics, but a lot of them, they didn't try to do the entire span of his life. This was, they did start when he was little or a young boy, but then they did cut it off around, they didn't go all the way up until now, but they did with the title credits, but they didn't have to make the whole movie.
They went to about, what was that supposed to be like, 84, 85, something like
so
that.
They could have gone all the way to him getting married and to him getting kids and,
No, they just decided to throw that up on title cards instead. So,
right.
Yeah. All right. I still grumble about that a little bit. But otherwise, it was great. One more scene. He goes to visit his father later on in life. Sure. And his father's kind of got a new situation, a new family. Heartbreaking. And just played really well by Egerton. Man.
Yeah, and especially because he holds it together enough while he's in there. You can tell that he's being affected. He does enough that you can tell he's being affected, but he leaves his dad's place and is in the car and then just totally loses it. So, yeah.
Good stuff.
It is.
All right. I'm highly recommending Rocketman. Thought it was great. Not that I'm comparing it to any other film that people may have seen in the last couple of years, but I thought infinitely better. And I do feel like it was also a much better lead performance.
Ooh,
as well.
Zinger.
Just going to say. So anyway, all right, with that, let's move on. That was Rocketman, still playing in theaters. Not doing great, but it's a rated R film. That automatically cuts down its audience, but I think it's having some good repeat business. I think it's a good positive word of mouth about it, and I hope it does well. So, all right, Chris, how about let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I believe you've got a couple news items to share with me.
I do.
And we can talk through those, and then when we wrap up with our recommendations of the episode. You're listening to Footcandle Films here on the Mesh.tv, and we'll be right back.
Hey guys, this is Mary Margaret from the Chick Chat podcast. Are you interested in promoting your business to an online audience? Your advertisement could be right here on the Mesh Podcast Network. Head over to themesh.tv for more details.
I am not normally one to watch trailers, Alan.
Okay.
But if it's a film that I actually already know the story, I'm much more inclined. So, have you seen the trailer for Dr. Sleep? Do you even know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Don't know it.
Dr. Sleep is the Shining sequel.
Oh.
Stephen King wrote a book.
No, I have heard of it now, but yes.
That was a sequel to The Shining, and they now have released a first trailer. I wasn't even aware that they were making a movie of this, and then now they are. They have released the first trailer, and what's exciting to me is I liked the book okay. I thought it was an interesting sequel to The Shining. In the lead role playing Danny is Ewan McGregor, which I like Ewan McGregor, and I feel like he's really kind of dropped off the radar after the Star Wars prequels, and then after Moulin Rouge, to me, and the new, I guess the last thing was T2, Trainspotting, that he was in. And other than that, I just feel like, I don't know, he kind of disappeared. Well, he's in this. It's honestly, because it's based on a book, it's an interesting story to me, which is a continuation of now Danny is a grown-up, and he's an alcoholic, and he still has problems every once in a while with the shine that comes to him. And it's kind of, he befriends a young girl who also has this power, and things happen.
I'm fascinated. I had heard Dr. Sleep at one point. I'd heard maybe rumors of it being in development. No, I had no idea that the film's made and a trailer's out.
Sure. And what's also interesting is the director is going to be Mike Flanagan. And Mike Flanagan, I've actually recommended two of his movies before on the show, Hush and Oculus, which are both like horror movies. So he's done those. And most recently, he did a Stephen King adaptation for Netflix.
Gerald's Game, right?
Gerald's Game, which I also saw, which not as crazy about that one. It was not that it was bad. It's just the book and the movie are just more not as interesting to me.
But I think more than anything is that this guy knows Stephen King.
Yeah, he's already had an experience adapting one thing.
And he knows horror, it sounds like, as well.
And he knows horror. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. Now, what's even more curious, when you watch the trailer, which you'll do after we record this, probably, it is a well-known fact that Stephen King was not fond of Stanley Kubrick's movie, The Shining.
Sure.
He had it remade at one point with Steven Weber, and it was like a made-for-TV movie. But what's interesting is, in this trailer, they, I think, use certain shots from Stanley Kubrick's movie, like the blood in the elevators.
Yeah.
And at the end of the trailer, they use kind of the creepy music that was in the beginning as the cars go into the Overlook Hotel in the first film.
Sure.
They use some of that creepy music at the end of this trailer. So I'm curious how Flanagan got away with that, because I'm assuming, or maybe Stephen King just kind of sells the rights and he doesn't have any control over what happens, because to me that was just kind of jarring. I liked the trailer, but then I was like, oh, that's weird. They're actually, I mean, I guess in a way you have to reference things in the movie, but you have to reference things that happened in the first movie, but to actually use some of the same music. It was kind of surprising to me.
It sounds like, just what I was looking at here, because now I'm totally fascinated and so glad you brought this up. Stephen King's given his blessing to the sequel and is actually helping work. He actually gave the blessing to hire Ewan McGregor for the role.
Okay.
So it sounds like he's on board, and maybe it's just a matter of saying, you know what, maybe this is his way of feeling like he can kind of redeem his feelings about the...
or he's made peace with it.
Peace with it. Or he's like, you know what, I want to kind of rectify some of the things I felt like I didn't care for in the Kubrick version of the original. Who knows? But I like the fact that it's a true film sequel, to The Shinings, by incorporating some of the same footage. And obviously it's not taking place in a different version of this telling of the story. It's not like it's a sequel to the TV movie version that was done much later. This is truly against the Kubrick original.
Now, what I don't know is if it's going to be released on Netflix or if it's actually coming to the theater. That's what I don't know, because since Flanagan has already done a Stephen King adaptation for Netflix, I was curious if this was also going to be a Netflix film. But I didn't find those details. But
it just has a release date of November 8th of this year. But again, I don't know. It doesn't say if it's online or not. So I would hope theatrical release, just because, this is the kind of film that as you get a little closer, I would hope would get a lot of promotion for it.
And we're going to have It Too coming out this summer, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it seems like there would be enough time to
play off of that. Yeah. Well, Rebecca Ferguson's in it too, which is great. I like her a lot. She's from the recent Mission Impossible movies. Jacob Tremblay is in it, which, from Room, the young kid from that. So that's interesting. No, I'm so glad you told me this. I really had no clue.
Yeah, I had heard of the book, but didn't know they were making a movie.
Wow.
So,
okay. I'm adding that to the wish list for the year. So that sounds interesting.
Okay. So this will probably be a relatively short news item, but I'm just really happy about it.
Okay.
They have announced that David Lynch will be receiving an honorary Oscar in October.
That's nice.
And, to me, I wonder if he had done the Twin Peaks Return miniseries for HBO, or no, it was Showtime. If he hadn't done that, if they would just be like, they would have forgotten about him. But because he got so much acclaim for that, and because they passed him over for Mulholland Drive and Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, I mean, he got nominated, but of course he didn't win.
Yeah.
And then he actually got a nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay for Elephant Man, but he didn't win that either. So I'm just really happy that my only regret is that I think that, they do this ceremony in October, so we probably won't see anything on the actual Oscars telecast. So it's not like a lifetime achievement where they bring the director up on stage and they give them that.
That's a shame, though.
But it is. But I'm still glad that at least they're recognizing him. And honestly, the other reason I'm sad is because I would just like to hear what he would say.
Well, that would be my curiosity too. So let me ask you, I know that you have been, you went through a whole process of rewatching Twin Peaks.
Yes.
Recently. You're still going through it maybe.
I'm still going through the process of watching the new series. I think I have The Return. I have like 2 episodes left, I think.
But so forgetting Twin Peaks and anything TV related, what's your favorite feature film, David Lynch feature film?
Well, and he did Fire Walk with Me, which was a feature.
True. Okay, let's exclude that just because. Yeah, let's exclude that.
Put that aside. That's really hard to say. I think it would probably be. I need to rewatch. It would probably be either Wild at Heart, or Mulholland Drive. But I would need to rewatch them because I like Blue Velvet too. It's just really weird. It's been a long time since I've seen it. And then I guess technically, a lot of people hate this movie, and they're redoing it. Dune. He directed that.
You like Dune, huh?
I did like Dune, but I think it's the type of thing where it came at the right point in my life where you thought they were never going to make any more Star Wars movies, and I was like, I want some science fiction. It was like a vast wasteland of science fiction, and then Dune came out, and I know it's not a perfect movie, but I remember digging it just because I was desperate for science fiction, and it was weird, which David Lynch is all about weird. Yeah. So, I don't know. I'd have to think, but probably either Wild at Heart or Mulholland Drive.
Okay, interesting. I freely admit, I need to refill my David Lynch viewing collection a little bit more.
Have you ever seen The Straight Story?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
actually, that's good.
Yeah, and just so different from
so different. I liked it, and I've seen several of his films, but I'll admit I was not always fully engaged, paying attention, fully engaged, like watching to really watch it.
Sure.
So it's maybe something that was on during some film classes I took, or in the background.
And you dozed
or
off and went to sleep.
Well, some of my film classes were at 8 a.m, so you go. That's a problem enough. Let me loop back to your first story about the Dr. Sleep. Just talking about Stephen King's involvement, I just happened to do a quick little check on the notes here. Okay. And, as you said, the film adapts King's novel, sequel novel to The Shining from his 2013 novel, Dr. Sleep, follows an adult Danny Torrance. It says the best response to the creepy new trailer actually came from Stephen King himself. Stephen King tweeted when Mike Flanagan put the trailer link up online. Okay. Stephen King retweeted it and said, "This movie is going to blow your mind if you have any left after It Chapter 2, that is." So he seems to be pretty happy with where the films are going with his work right now.
Or his wallet's really happy.
That too. Anything could make it happen.
Right.
One other thing I'll add to this, just while we're talking Stephen King, did you ever watch the TV show Under the Dome?
No. No, that's not true. I'd read the book.
Yeah, I know you did.
I think I watched the first. Did they do more than one season?
Yeah, I think so. Like maybe a season and a half. I don't know if it went a full 2 seasons.
I watched a certain amount, but then I stopped, and I don't remember how much I watched.
My wife and I watched most all of it, and it got more and more disappointing as it went along, and just didn't really hold up. Supposedly, Stephen King probably felt the same way about it, so he's currently shopping around trying to find a new version of Under the Dome to tell, and so we'll see.
Netflix will pick it up.
Well, I'm happy if he wants to do that. And again, I don't think it works as a singular movie. I think it still needs to be.
The book is huge.
Yeah, it's a dense story, and I think there's a lot of. But I would love to see it taken away from. I mean, I think CBS did it, and it was like a primetime show, and it just felt very watered down. It felt very a little more soap opera-ish than I think it was meant to be. And I think they could have done a lot better with it. So I'm hopeful that maybe they do something a little different there with that as well.
If we're going to, before we close out, since I brought Stephen King up, we looped back. David Lynch, we still love you, but there's not as much to talk about. We're just happy.
True.
Or I'm happy. I am sad that the Gunslinger franchise has probably died a sad death because...
No, it's not.
Has it not?
No, it has not. There is actually hope still for it.
I really love those books. They're really good. And that movie was a disappointment.
Well, even Ron Howard has said he made a mistake with the Gunslinger movie. He has come out and said, I think it should have been horror. I think that it landed in a place, both in our minds and the studios, that it could be made PG-13 and sort of a boy's adventure. I really think we made a mistake. We could have made it darker, more hard-boiled look, and make it the Gunslinger's character study more than Jake. Right. So he gets it. He agrees. Now, Amazon, let me just tell you, this looks to be our third news item. Okay. This is coming from Cinema Blend, online, cinemablend.com. Amazon is going to be making an adaptation of The Dark Tower.
Okay. Starting over.
Okay. So it has cast its gunslinger, Roland. Sam Strike is lent to the role. He's been on the sci-fi series Night Flyers. Anyway, he's going to be playing Roland in the Dark Tower TV series. So Amazon is producing it and doing it. Not Idris Elba. Let's see. The TV series will serve as an origin story for the character as it picks up with Roland long before the movie did. Among the things covered will be the origins of how Roland acquires his guns and accordingly became a gunslinger. It will feature his first mission as one.
Which is covered in the books as well.
Yeah.
So it's like they're taking...
It will feature his first skirmish with the Man in Black.
Yeah. It's basically, I think, this is showing my true nerd colors. I think it's the book Wizards and Glass.
Okay.
Is they're taken, which is like, I think the fourth book, and because it was kind of like his backstory, Roland's backstory. Well, that's awesome.
Oh, there you go. As for the plot details, they seem to confirm that viewers will get to see aspects of the fourth book in the Dark Tower series. That book, Wizard and Glass, tells the story of how Roland, all that. So
awesome.
Cool. A premiere date has not been set, but when it does, it'll do so on Amazon. So there's hope.
Only sad thing. There is hope, but then not hope for me unless I
you don't have
bum
a
off
Prime
somebody's
membership.
Amazon membership. But yeah, because just like I won't be able to see the Star Wars thing because it's going to be on Hulu.
Disney Plus.
Oh, sorry, Disney Plus. Yet another.
Yeah,
So,
that's the Mandalorian series.
Right. I'm not going to get to see that with Werner Herzog. So if it's on Amazon, I probably won't get to see it. So,
or you just do the purge like I do and figure out which services you can cancel and then swap out with the new ones. So.
Or there's always the free trial. So
yeah, there's that too. Okay, I think we actually made the news segment last a good while with that, so covered a lot of ground there. Before we move on to our recommendations, which is the final part of our show, just want to make a couple quick notes and a couple things to be aware of, and then here in a minute, Chris and I will both be giving our recommendations for the episode of films we think may be worth checking out. Just a couple quick reminders. This podcast is available on the Mesh.tv network. So if you are interested in seeing back episodes or finding other shows of interest on our network, it's themesh.tv, TheMesh.tv. And we'll give you a little bit of information at the end of the show, but just keep on your radar. Footcandle.org is the website for our film society. If you happen to be in the Western North Carolina area and want to join us. And we'll be teasing in a little bit our Footcandle Film Festival coming up in September of this year. So a lot of ways to kind of stay in touch with some things going on in the film community around our area. So Chris, let's just go ahead and move into our recommendations. And I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll go first just because you did some of the talking for the news items there. And then I'll let you go in with your recommendation too. All right. So my recommendation is going to be surprising. And it is a little bit of a mea culpa.
Garfield, A Tale of Two Kitties.
No, I still have yet to see that. I don't watch much TV anymore, meaning just turning on a channel and just letting something roll. Normally my TV viewing is I'm there to watch something. I know what I'm watching. I'm going to pull it up on Netflix or on iTunes and watch a movie or whatever it may be.
Gotcha.
So the idea of just turning on like TNT or USA or FX or some of these networks and just letting a movie play doesn't really happen much anymore. But the other day, decided to kind of just kick down. Couldn't have anything else. Didn't want to get too invested in anything else at the moment. So I had a little bit of downtime and I flipped around. And a musical biopic was on that we've already mentioned in the show and has kind of gotten a little bit of a rap of being maybe the ultimate version of what has gone wrong with musical biopics over time. It becomes so cliche, and that is Walk the Line.
Okay.
I remember, I think you and I maybe reviewed it on the show or talked about it at some point. I'm not sure. But I know you and I have both mentioned the film before, just like we did previous in the show, is kind of being that it was almost the one that really pushed them to make Walk Hard. It's like, okay, after Ray Charles film and then the Walk the Line, I think that's when they said, okay, we've got to parody these musical biopics now because they're kind of getting very formulaic. All right, Walk the Line is still formulaic in its storytelling, but I found a few things with it watching it again that actually really worked for me more than they did maybe the first time. Maybe the first time I'm viewing it, I'm watching it truly to see how good a musical biopic it is and kind of getting a little tired of the cliches. This time I'm watching it more for performances.
Okay.
I will say, Joaquin Phoenix is really good in this role.
Okay.
And I probably did not give him enough credit first time around. Does he look like Johnny Cash? No, not really. But man, you want to talk about mimicking a character on stage and the raw energy of that person. He captured Johnny Cash for sure. And I thought Reese Witherspoon as June Carter was also really good. Better than I expected and remembered.
She won an Oscar.
I think she did, yeah. And I think it was one of those roles that, I was maybe cheering for somebody else to win the Oscar that year. But going back, no. I'm still not sure if she deserved the highest honor of acting that year, but she was really good. Okay. And I admired that the film, Yes, it explored Johnny Cash and it explored kind of his rise to stardom and some of the demons he faced. What I was probably the most impressed with, though, is there was also this interesting side story of June Carter and the fact that she had just gone through a divorce, leaving her husband, which at the time, and especially in Southern America, that was a big no-no. And like she was shunned because of her failed marriage, that she left her husband.
Right.
And the fact that she was so concerned about now getting in a relationship with Johnny Cash, who was married at the time, and all that would encompass and what toll it took on her was actually really well done. So I think the movie did a good job of tackling kind of a little bit of a touchy subject, at the time.
Sure.
And not afraid to show that, she was, there was a scene where she's in the supermarket or a drugstore or something, and she kind of gets accosted by one of the employees like, that guy was a good guy. I don't know why you did that to him, and shame on you type of thing. It's like, wow, okay. I assume that actually did happen, those types of things. And it was an interesting subject matter to cover in the film. So the music's good. The acting's good. It's very formulaic. You know where it's going to go. You know it's going to be sex, drugs, rock and roll. But it's a well done film. So I'm going to give it credit that, second time around, I found a lot to really respect about the film. So that's Walk the Line, my recommendation there. Chris, what have you got for us?
So I've recently caught up with the 2009 comedy Observe and Report. This is a Seth Rogen vehicle. It's directed by Jody Hill, and I'll give you a brief plot synopsis. Bipolar mall security guard Ronnie Barnhart, played by Seth Rogen, is called into action to stop a flasher from turning Shopper's Paradise into his personal peep show. But when Barnhart can't bring the culprit to justice, a surly police detective is recruited to close the case. So this is a funny movie. I had never seen it. It was nice to watch. I will say humor is very, very dark. Because, so it is not a family film, but very dark. But I liked it. And the cast is pretty amazing. I mentioned Seth Rogen, Ray Liotta, Michael Pena, Anna Faris, Aziz Ansari, Jesse Plemons. So it has like a lot of people. And this came out in 2009. So this is 10 years ago. So you're getting to see a very young Seth Rogen, very young, so it was enjoyable. I really liked it. But like I said, it can be there's lots of language all over the place, but it's just really, I really liked it. Plus, I will admit, there was a time in my life where I actually had to work in a mall. So I was not a mall cop, but I worked in a mall. So that helped because,
interesting. You had some good perspective on it.
Oh, yeah. The majority of the movie takes place in the mall. So I'll just say, it's
Observe and Report. That was a film I know when it came out, it kind of had some high expectation that people were disappointed. I think maybe because it was darker humor than,
And actually, I learned a little trivia because afterwards I was like, man, I can't believe this movie's not, more known, or people know of it, but not talked about more. Well, what had happened was when Warner Brothers was going to release it, they were going to force Jody Hill to make like a PG-13 cut of it. And they went ahead and made the cut, and then they did test screenings, and the scores were terrible.
Wow.
So then they went back and were like, no, because I guess the original R rating, when it was very dark, they didn't want it to be as dark.
Okay.
But they went back and they left it at dark, and I guess it still didn't do as well, but it did better than I guess they thought the PG-13
They would have the
PG-13
cut. Interesting.
So that may have been a little bit of the kind of controversy that came of it.
Could have been.
But Observe and Report. I recommend it.
All right. We're going to go a couple ones from a few years back. We both recommended here. Worth checking out on that. So that's our show for today. We did our reviews of Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which we were on the same page with our review, but our reviews were split between the good and the bad of the film.
Sure.
Then Rocketman, which we were both very positive on and had some good feedback, barring a couple little missteps, but otherwise really good film. Then we went into our news and we talked about the follow-up film to The Shining, which is, to me, just fascinating. Talked about David Lynch getting some recognition upcoming soon. And then even dipped back into the Stephen King world with The Gunslinger, talking about the Dark Tower series a bit. And our recommendations for the show as well, we closed out. So with that, we're going to get ready to wrap up. But before we do, I just want to make a quick plug. And Chris, anything chime in that I forget to say about this? About our film festival coming up. September 27th through the 29th. For those of you maybe joining this show for the first time, Chris and I run a film society here in Western North Carolina. About 600 plus people come out on a monthly basis to enjoy some interesting films and dialogue. We have an annual film festival that's open to the public, held September 27th through the 29th of this year. Probably, if I had to guess, 30, 35 films we may be showing over the course of the weekend. Those will be announced in latter half of July. Coming up soon. Tickets will be on sale at that same time. We are looking forward to a great weekend, combination of short films, narratives, documentaries, and we cap off the whole weekend with a great dinner banquet with awards and recognitions being distributed. So it's a fun weekend. We have a great time. It'll be our 5th year doing the festival. So I think keeps getting better every year. So we're hoping if you happen to have some time in late September, want to come join us out here in the neighborhood of Hickory, North Carolina, Western North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. We would love to have you. Drop us a line. Let us know if you want to come, and we'll make sure we get you some information along the way. All right.
And the place that you can drop us a line or email us feedback about the show is info@themesh.tv. You can also, if you'd like, we would appreciate it, subscribe to us on iTunes or encourage others to. Leave a star rating with a review. That helps us reach new listeners. If iTunes is not your bag, we're also on Spotify and on Stitcher, so you can check us out there. Follow us on Letterboxd or even on Twitter, @Chris Fry, @Alan Jackson, or @Footcandle Film.
Yeah, a lot of ways to reach us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. So that's it for Footcandle Films today, and we will look forward to talking with you about movies here again very soon.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.